Okay, well, we're trying once again to get our shape files into Blender, and so having that to work on, I've brought in the one that has all of the preserved stuff, but it doesn't match up. So I'm trying now to just move it by hand and see if I can get things to line up. So I'm hitting the scale key, and that's a pain to have to do that. It's not totally impossible to do, but as you can see, things don't line up perfectly in here. So you have to keep things selected and then keep shifting stuff over. So it looks like the updated file that I was sent has more of the corridor in it, but getting it to match up isn't going to be easy. So this is the old file that's underneath here. But that's getting pretty good. You know, trying to get the scale just perfect. I don't know if I can even do that. You do what you can in this domain to make that work. No, I certainly didn't do a good job there, that part. May have to go back and individually place many of these files, but at least we can see that, like, if I want to go and find where the Mari Selby Botanical Gardens in, I can select it here in the menu and then come over here, and then once my cursor is over here, hit the period key and it goes straight to that piece of the landscape. Then I can do some searches. So if I search for Pasco, then when I go to Pasco Palms Reserve and I do that, now I'm at that part of the map. But the map that I brought in is way too grainy when you get down to that level. So I think what we have to do, if we're going to just use Blender GIS now, is see, is there a way to go into GIS and go to get web geodata and get a base map now, and whenever you click on this, it gives you the whole map, right? And then it starts to pull in and resolve itself bit by bit. So if I come into Florida and I move in, and I've got that dot of Pasco Palms Reserve, so now if I really come in that tight and I do a slice by hitting B as the bounding box and just go over Pasco County, now that's the section I've come in on. And then when I hit E for extrusion, you see I get a much more highly detailed map that comes in for just that section. And I can individually manipulate that and move that up in G and Z so it's closer up to the pieces that I want. And then when I click on like Pasco Palms, or if I go to the Phillips Mathis Conservation Easement and hit period, you can see where that is in relation to that bit of Pasco. But I'm going to have to then move things. So if I take this is the new shape file that they sent me, hit GZ and lift that up. Wow, like that's not even, there is no part of the corridor that's in Pasco that's on that. It's like Pasco's been abandoned. Like, what is that about? So I'm going to have to ask Justin about that, because there's the current corridor that's all connected that they're working on. But these little fragments, it's like it bypasses Pasco County completely. Whereas we're here, and if I go to this, like, why is it not? I have to get rid of Pasco. So I'm looking at Pasco here. If I go to here, this is the Starkey Wilderness Preserve. This piece here is the Connor Preserve. This piece here is Brooker Creek Headwaters. This piece here is Brook or Creek Preserve. And where we are at Rosebud is located somewhere in here, in between the Cypress Creek Flood Detention Area and the Starkey Wilderness Preserve. So we're somewhere in here, and that's where you need to be able to get in even tighter than that. So here I'm going to do another layer, and I really should, by the way, let me find this one. This export Google Sat, I want to make this one Pasco County TH slice, I'll call it underscore TH underscore slice. And then having done that, I'll then try to come in between these two nature preserves. And maybe I should make these, and I should duplicate these, like everything around Rosebud. That and that and that and that. Those are the ones that I want to highlight. If I hit join, I guess I could hit join. If I hit Control J, no, if I hit Shift D and duplicate them, yeah, and then having them selected as a duplicate, if I hit Control J and join them, now I have one file of all of them. Let me see what that, yeah, there they are. And I think that now, let me see if I hide them, if I turn them back on. It doesn't seem, well, of course I can't see them. So there's, let me move it out here for a second and then turn them off. Yeah. So let me go back. Oops. There they are. So this is going to be called Pasco Reserves, and then of course underscore TH. That way I can find them, and I'll also now, because it's a single object, I will color them by turning the color and picking a new material and making them kind of lime green. Then they'll be easier to see from space. And then I can try to match them better too to the actual landscape without getting involved in all of this. So here now, if I bring it down, or maybe I'm going to bring all this up. Let's bring this and shift click this, and let's bring everything up in Z so we have some relief there. That way, now when I click on just that object, there it is in real life. A little bit off, so I have to do the scaling a little bit better. But yeah, you can see what those pieces are. If you actually were to look at, if I move them over, there they are. What's left of them? Those pieces there. So I really need to go to 7 so you have a better look on it and look down. So I'm a little better off. So it looks like those are not part of that. That black is the now proposed corridor, and Pasco just ain't part of it unless I'm mistaken about something. And then to find Rosebud, I have to go in tighter. And this is where it's very hard using Blender GIS to pinpoint an area. So this is where I prefer to, unless OpenStreetMap does it. No, see, there's no way to put in an address in this, as far as I can tell. So this is where you want to go in and grab from Blender OSM, and that's another plugin you have to do. So you go to type in Blender OSM, and you want to download that. I've bought this so many times for $0, purchase again, because I'm always purchasing it over and over, and there's get it for there, and then it sends you an email, and then you hit download. And I don't want to open this file, so I'm just going to assume it went to my downloads folder. Go into Blender again and go into Edit Preferences and do install and find that download, which should be called Blossom. There it is. I've got many of them going all the way back to 2019, but today is the one I did. This one, keep it zipped, do not unzip it, and install the add-on. Click on it to activate it. Go down. You need to pick a directory, just as I'd done before. I'm using the Blender GIS files in there, and I have Blender GIS catch there. Accept it, and then you need either a Mapbox token or an ArcGIS token. So if I go get it, and I should have a ArcGIS account. I think it's Innoventor. I hope it's Innoventor. Maybe it's Innoventor 2020, and then password. Let's hope. Yeah, there I am. I want to build mapping applications. I want to build customized apps. Extend professional. Not sure. Decline to answer. I can just tell them for their data. I always want to help people out with data. Build mapping. So update that. API is required. Oh, sorry. Let's do it for Unity. Okay. Great. So I'm setting up a API token and then return to dashboard. So now I want to get an API key, and dashboards, downloads, search, API. Token. Teud. Token manager, generate token. Well, that didn't do it. So maybe what I can do now, let's just see, I've created this. If I go back to Blender and I tell it that I want to get it, it's supposed to throw me into You're signed in with a public account, which is a limited set of permissions. You can upgrade it for free, continue your public account to download APIs, or sign in with a different account. Well, I just want to get the API. So what do you want me to do? Sample code, dashboard, downloads, checksum, APIs and SDKs. That's a checksum, but that's not the key. So what is the key? Dashboard. Mapping APIs and services. Find in page. What does Blender want? Blender wants an access token, and when we do that it gets me here, but it doesn't tell me where my access token would come from. So if I go access token, permanent token that grants you accesses. Alright, create and configure an API key. Use it. Create a key. Alright. Tutorial. Create and manage the key. They make it awful difficult, don't they? New API key. Prerequisites. You have to have an account. create a new page. Go to the API key page on your dashboard. And it's not letting me. Access token. So it may be that, unless I'm missing something completely, because it's so much easier using Mapbox. I mean, let me try this again. Go here, say get it. It tells me I need to upgrade. So I'm going to upgrade the account. See what happens. There. Well, so you had to upgrade the account. All right, then. So click on that and copy it. I think that's the copy. Show value. Click to copy. All right, so now I have the key. So now I'm going to come back and go in here and put the token there. It's a lot easier when you use Mapbox. In Mapbox, I sign in and it takes me directly to their key. And I have a bunch of them. Rosebud Continuum Fight Against Bad Development is one of them. And then I'll have that available as well. Then I can choose between them and see what comes up better. All right, so having that, having done the directory preferences, both Blender GIS and Blender OSM ask you to give a cache to store the files and a way to get your satellite imagery. So you save your preferences there. Now that I've done that, now it appears over here. See, Blender GIS appeared over there. OpenStreetMap appears over here. So you might not even see it. It might be hidden there, and you'll have to click on this little caret or little arrow to get it to come out. Or you have to hit the N key and then go to Blender OSM. And then you're going to select. And this is much easier because it takes you to a website, and I can write Rosebud Continuum on there, and then it'll zoom right in on that part of Florida. And then I can go to satellite image, and there it is, and come out here. And then I have to find some features that I can match, since that's Rosebud right there. These lakes may help. You can see the reserve over there. So what if I were to take this, use my selection rectangle, and take it from here to here, the 41 and Collier Parkway and a piece of the reserve there. That and that strange looking lake there, that should give me enough so that I can see where I am. So then you copy that using that copy key, go back to Blender and then paste it into the extent. That puts the coordinates in, and then import the terrain first. And that should come in at a certain point. Why hasn't it come in? Maybe it's way off the map again. I have to move it back in. So let's find it here. It should come in as terrain. There it is, terrain. I click on it. I'll call this Rosebud Terrain, or Terrain Rosebud. So let me just do that for a second. Terrain Rosebud. And then hit the period key. There's that piece of terrain. It's underground somewhere. So GZ, lift it up, 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 up. There it comes. And we'll see if that maps on right, because now that I have that terrain and I haven't left Blender SM, I'll go to the image overlay. This is the one where you can either use ArcGIS Satellite or Mapbox. I'm going to try ArcGIS. That's the one, remember, in here you have the option of use the token for ArcGIS access token or Mapbox. I have that choice. There's Mapbox, there's ArcGIS. I don't know the other ones. We'll try ArcGIS. And it's going to bring in these tiles. So I'm going to say import that image overlay. And then you see it downloading down here, the number of tiles that are coming through. It's 208 tiles. Just for this little piece here. and then we'll see if we get it in the right geographical location or if we have to move it. I find myself asking, what am I really doing here? Like, what's the point of doing all this? Because you can just go on Google Maps and see all this stuff, but it's to be able to, we're trying to create a corridor where you walk as a panther or a bear or another four-legged or two-legged being from one piece of the corridor through the fragmented habitat to the other piece. And then you see how citizens in our communities can use their backyards and their roads as part of that to create a path. All right, so that should have come through. I'm not sure why it didn't, because that's the piece. Unless it's this piece. Oh, there it is. It's way under there. So let me move that up. Ah, there it is. Okay. So I don't know what that I called terrain rosebud. That one is yeah, I don't know what that is. So I think I can get rid of that safely and then focus on this terrain. I'll call this terrain rosebud. Okay, and now the question is did it come in right? So if I move it around, obviously it didn't come in right because that's not that part of the landscape. So we've got to look at the roads to see where they match, because it sure did not come in relative to the other map. Okay, it may be, if we look at it, let's see what it did. It came in here. So this is where sometimes you have to take a bigger slice. I'm just trying to find this piece here by the road. What is that? Because this is correct, right? That's that piece. That's that piece. So the wildlife corridor is there, but where are we in relation to that? Is it this one here? Seems it's not because I have it too high, I don't think, because that's just right above it, but it's not situated properly. So I think what I'm going to have to do is get another slice that has this very recognizable piece in it and then find it from there. So let me go back then to go back to select and put rosebud in. And then bring in my satellite. And look at this. I keep losing it too whenever I move it over. That's that big piece of landscape. So where were we? We're here. I wish it would let me drop a pin, but it doesn't. So we're here, we're here. That's the big piece of landscape. Isn't that what corresponds to that? Isn't that this piece over here? And if that is the case, where is that big lake there? So that's us. Keeping my finger on it. There's the Starkey Ranch. There's the other piece, and that's us, that tiny piece there. So it is right over by that ranch. So it's somewhere over here. So what's all that? Let me see. What then is this, is all this? Because it should be somewhere down in here. Even if I move this over, because I don't need it so much. For now, I can move it back. But what are we seeing here? We are seeing what I thought was the green space there. I might be looking in the wrong direction. Maybe our roads are it's so grainy. It's not fitting. And so maybe I have to come up with a better slice. Let's do this. I'm going to move this way out here into the ocean for now. I'm going to go to GIS again and go for a base map that I know will match this base map. And then I'm going to like really come in on it. And take this. Oh, I see where I am wrong. I'm way down here and I meant to be up here. Rosebud is up in here. Sorry about that. Maybe I don't need to do that. But yeah, the actual map that I want is this piece in here, right by Starkey there. And then if I do my bounding box and come at it like that, oops, I shouldn't have done that. I should have taken my bounding box like this and then hit E for extrude, and then I can raise that plane up to get a much higher resolution. One. Yeah. And now I should be able to see this. In fact, isn't it somewhere in here? So let me take my little slice there and come up to here. And let's make this match somehow. There you go. You're this. Alright, so to make this really match, you can come into that slice and change its alpha from blend mode to alpha blend. And when you've made it alpha blend, then you can take the alpha and you can make it somewhat transparent, as you can see me doing here. And then when it's somewhat transparent, you can see through it, and we can try to match up the features. Let's bring it down to the map. And then much better. All right, now we can bring it full strength. That's the little piece, Terrain Rosebud. This one here is the, I'll call it donut, terrain donut hole, because that's what the developers called it, that they said needs to be filled with high density residential stuff. This one here is, which one is this? That's the whole thing. So this is Florida, Terrain Florida. Okay, Pasco County TH slice is that one. Then comes Terrain Donut Hole, and then Terrain Rosebud is that little piece there. Then when I bring the Florida Wildlife Corridor sections, oops, bring them up. Okay, then we can see as we move them and try to get them to fit a little better that Rosebud is sitting on the edge of, and we click here and you will see that's sitting on the edge of Pasco reserves, but that actual Pasco reserve does have a name, and the name is from what we had under here. I'm going to have to bring that up and match it. Oops. It's hard to get it to move without getting really messed up. Let's try it this way. GZ, bring it up. Yeah. So I've got to move that piece into place where it belongs. And now I have the ability to manipulate that. So I can actually hide this Pasco reserves, focus on this here to make it sit perfectly if I can. And that piece, which I'm going to give a unique color to, so it's Cypress Creek Flood Detention Area, that piece I can give a new material to. So I'll give it a color and make it that color green and call it Cypress Creek. So there's Rosebud and there's Cypress Creek in our data space, flood detention area actually. The other piece that we had under there, this one here, if we bring that up and make sure that that is placed properly. That one is the Starkey Wilderness Preserve, and I'll give that its own unique color and call that the Starkey Wilderness Preserve. So now we see Rosebud in the context of these two pieces of the corridor and realize that, and there's another piece just to the north of us, and this as well. I can leave those out of there, bring this up, and it's really hard unless you go like this. There we are. And that piece here, which is a little off, it needs to actually be, does it come down in there? Maybe not. Hard to tell with the map. But that one there is the Crossbar Ranch well field, and this one here is the Albar Ranch. So we might as well give them colors and maybe make this Well Ranch. Crossbar Well Ranch. So that's where the animals, where they can go, and there's another little tiny piece down at the bottom there. When we do look for our Pasco reserves that I made, Pasco reserves TH, there we go. You'll see that, yeah, so those are some of the pieces that are there that I'd have to pull up into this map, and that's all the animals really, that's where they have to get to. They got to go through there and there, but we are this lake right there. That's where we're situated in this big mosaic. And then we have to come in there and bring that into Unity. You want the highest resolution photo. This is a good reference. And probably what we can then do, we've got this for reference. Let me save this as a Rosebud And for the FWC, and put that in Blender GIS files. So we're going to try to work on ways that let me hide these. We now know what they are. I'm going to hit H to hide them. That this is that Cypress Creek detention, and that this, let me hide that with H, that this is the wildlife preserve area, and that we're over here on this little lake over there. And the game is to get through from here, if you're a bear or a panther, and then find your way safely across to there. Or make it from here down to there, or make it from down here up to there. And have these pieces identified. And maybe teleport. So the idea here today was to document that it is useful to have both Blender OSM and Blender GIS. When I go here, since I have this, to the OpenStreetMap, I can get some buildings and water objects and forests and railways, and I can do a gabled roof and set the height of that and do it as a single object. So when I hit import here, it should bring those buildings in for that piece of landscape. Now, where did they end up? Because I moved everything? That's another really good question. So here's the OSM, there's the buildings, and I hit this, there they are. They're down there with the water features. So to get them to move, I'd have to highlight them all and then bring them up. And then zoom in with period and bring them down onto the map. And I have to make them fit. So that's okay. So that's the OpenStreetMap information for the area that is registered. And there's some buildings here, but the only buildings that show up, I don't even, no, this is way too big. Oops. So they didn't come in properly, did they? That piece there, if I can't even get this thing to work, but if I scale it down and bring it all down, and then move it like that, and then scale it up a bit. So now we have the road features in there, and a couple of buildings that came in. In our case, let me move it again like that. In our case, on the Rosebud Lake, there is a building. Oops. So I have to individually start moving all these features around. The water features are not perfect. I mean, there's our buildings in there. Not terrible. It actually belongs here. So I put that on the landscape. So there's a lot of playing that you have to do to get everything perfect on the map. But you can bring in those features as well with this. Okay. think maybe what would be useful now is to try and see where the bear crossings ended up, but they don't show up because of that stupid dot there. So I'm not sure how we can use that information from this. There's a lot more to learn about what we can do. You are supposed to be able to import OpenStreetMap information, but then you'd have to have it on your computer if you're using Blender GIS. When using this, you can get OpenStreetMap. It says highways and waterways, but I get too large an extent. So you have to maybe start this, like let's go to a new file, save these changes, and let's try to figure out together how if you go into WebGeoData and get a base map, and it comes up, and then you say, okay, great, and I can't type in like I could with OSM, I have to do it by the map. So I keep moving the map to the center. And then wait for it to come in, the mosaic. I guess you have to be really intimately familiar with your landscape. So I'm going to find Rosebud. There it is, right there. That's us on Hale Road. Alright, so I've found us just because I know the area now, and I'm trying to get this wildlife issue here of coming in. Or did I lose this again? There we are. No? There we are, there. Alright, so the wilderness there. So then these buildings should show up, as do the bishop's house, at least on that OSM thing. So what about this one? If I take my bounding box and I grab this piece here and then hit E for extrude, I get my extent. Alright, then if I go having this piece open, tell it to get OSM and bring in the buildings and the highways and the land use and the natural and the waterways. Get the elevation from the object. Default height, I'll bring it down, it's always too big. And say OK. It tells me there's an error. So this is the issue that I'm having. If I do import WebGeoData, if I get elevation, it's going to go to that API key that I put in before. That should work. Should work. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I guess there is elevation information, but unlike, so here, when you bring in the elevation, and this is really cool, you can go to the modifier, and here it does have a DEM texture. And you can come into the DEM, or the digital elevation map, and you can change the strength and show like what the contours are really all about. Like obviously the lakes are the deep places, and if there was sort of folding there'd be mountains. But this is Florida, so it's really flat. So usually you set this at, oops, not at 4. You can see the depression there where that lake went in. That's an exaggeration. It's usually set at 1. But you do have this ability to try to mess with some of the strengths of the elevation. And that does, give you some more relief possibilities for seeing how flooding would occur. But then even there, now if I go again and I go to GIS and I say get OSM, even if I don't do the elevation, if I don't do the building's extrusion. Oh, maybe it did work. But did it work? No, it didn't. I see ways and waterways. Wait a minute, I get ways and buildings. Okay. Where did they go? Oh. What's that? Natural areas. But they're like way off of the map. Like that piece there should be like over here. And it's not. So areas of land use are there. So you do get some data on that. And that one actually does seem to conform. So they call that land use. Okay, that's interesting. They call that natural area. Then what is all of this? Like, oh yeah, that does map on it. That's natural areas. So then this stuff in here is not a natural area? That's odd. But that's natural areas. Land use is that. Highway is that. And for highway, maybe we should see if we can give it a new color and make it something bright and yellow so we can see it. But I don't see highways showing up. Buildings, there's the buildings, alright. They don't have much elevation, if at all. Oh yeah, and it does show the Rosebud building. But they really don't... There they are. Let's see if we zoom in on it. There's no information there, there's no height information. I can try it again. I can go to GIS and bring in OSM, and this time just say building, and then say elevation from object, and try that. Ah, we did, nope, same thing. Let's try this again. Go get OSM, do buildings, do building extrusion, and give it default height. And it says, please define the query extent in orthographic top view. Oh, interesting. Alright, go to orthographic top view, try it again, tell it to do this and say get OSM, do building extrusion. I'll even separate the objects. Nope, didn't like that. What if I were to do the bounding box again and hit that? No, it doesn't seem to want to do that. Get elevation, get OSM, building. Nope. Huh. So it's something wrong with the getting OSM in this when I try to separate the objects. When I don't try to separate the objects, same problem. So getting the elevation data is not happening in here. And that again is where OSM works better. The problem is that OSM doesn't mesh with this base map. So you have to then replace everything. But as I said, it has the advantage that you can look stuff up and then bring it in, because there's the actual buildings. So a lot to play around with and to continue to work with using Blender GIS and using Blender OSM. Maybe I'm using the wrong spatial system. A lot more reading to do. When you do have your landscape done, you can take a piece of it like this, and you can go to File and export this as an FBX. And I will make that Blender GIS files, and I'll make one that's Blender add-ons. I'll make this a new folder and call it FBX files for Florida Wildlife Corridor. And I'll call this Rosebud environs. And make sure I only do the selected object here. And apply the transform so that the Z is forward and Y is up. So I'll export that, and then I need this image. So I'm going to, if I understand this correctly, I need to then go to UV editing and select this, and then I need to save the image and save that TIFF as Rosebud environs.tiff and hope that Unity takes the TIFF. If it doesn't, then I have to convert it to a JPEG. So, time to go to Unity Hub. Wait for that. Go to Unity Hub. There we go. You get to sit with me and see just how long it takes to just even open these programs, and why you have to devote most of your afternoon to doing this. Now, what do I have in terms of Unity installs? I have 2018, I got 2022. Alright, let's try that one. In that case, I'll use a project. I'll create a new project using 2022. And I'm going to call it Rosebud environs. Oops. Florida Wildlife Corridor. And the location is going to be in hold on, I may have to take this call. This is Dr. Culhane.
Hey, Dr. Culhane.
Hi.
Hey.
Are you downstairs?
No, we'll be around 6 there, like 25 minutes from now.
Okay. I'll just get back. I'm streaming. I'm live streaming. Okay.
Okay.
All right. See you later. Love you. Bye. Okay. So, where should I save this? I guess I've got it set to this Blender GIS files. Good. And I'm going to make a folder for it called, yeah, why not? I'll use that same folder. All right. And create. And now Unity is going to open up. I think what I have to do now, I'm going through all this because then I can review this, write a script, and then videotape this process and just edit it to it so nobody has to wait for all of this, because this is maddening. It's like watching paint dry. And you can only do that in video editing. But this is just capturing the live stream. And Unity's just taking its sweet time. There it comes. Alright. Oops, that's not Unity. Unity is coming up. It's creating from a template. Unity is doing its sweet thing. We just have to wait for it while it copies its template library. Just wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. It's taking its sweet time. While it's doing that, go back to layout. It's interesting to see the information that's available. This doesn't have any names from this. So it doesn't look like you get names from this unless you separate the objects, which we did. But then would it have that data? Yeah, it does. The buildings now have data, but they don't have any names to them. Oh, some of them do. Land of Lakes Post Office. Okay, so some of the buildings have it. Like there's the post office on the road up there. There's Pasco County Fire. So that is interesting. So you do get some of the OpenStreetMap. Kempton Financial Group, Capital Tacos, ABC Pizza. We go down there a lot. So yeah, there's stuff you can do in Blender then with Blender GIS to get some of that. But a lot of these buildings don't have any information on them. How would you extrude them? What's this building here? Let's see. Areas building. Oh, that's just all the buildings before I did them as separate objects. And this is the one where they came in. But you could extrude the buildings like these here. There should be, or the ones at Rosebud, you should be able to come into and that's the ones that are there. Where's this one? How do I get at it? There it is. So there's a separate building there that I should be able to, bring up. There. And then there's another building there. But when you have that building in Blender, you could go into the edit mode by hitting Tab and then select all of the vertices and then hit E for extrude on Z. Oops, should have done that, E on Z. And then you can bring the building up from that information and then come into it and say Bishop's House, and then that one goes in there. And then this one here is the garage, which we use as a classroom, but to get at it again I have to somehow find it. There it is. Bring it up a little bit so it's above that little bit of landscape, and then I can again hit Tab to edit it and then select all those vertices and extrude, and then I can call that Rosebud Classroom. So now I have stuff that I can actually identify that has some dimension to it that I could start to play with. It did bring in a water feature under natural areas, but it didn't, I mean, we could take that and bring it up to fill the lake. We then have a separate object here. We can make it blue along with the other water features. That's purple. So what is it? Let's make it blue, make it a dark blue. Yeah, but they're not separated. So if you want to separate it, because I brought all these in at one point, then this we'd have to go to, I think it's, you go to tab and then you select everything. Or no, actually you can select now this mesh and then hit Alt P, I think it is, or is it P, just P, separate by selection. Okay, so now this is a separate object. And now I can come into it and call it Lake Rosebud. So I have that piece there. The rest are all joined as different water features. But I can begin to identify and take those pieces out. All right, so it looks like it looks as though Unity is up. So there's Unity. And I'd taken that FBX. I'm going to call this scene, save scene as, and call this Rosebud environment, and save it. And I'm going to bring in my assets. That is a scene. So there's a sample scene there, and then there's other environments. So I drop that in there. I'm going to bring in my assets, create a folder, and I'm going to call this folder Rosebud Landscape. And in Rosebud Landscape, I'm going to import a new asset. And where did I put it? There it is. There's the FBX. So I'm going to import that in there. And when I drop that on, there it is, but it has no information in terms of materials. So I need to give it I need to create another folder which I'll call materials, and I need to create a new material or let it create it itself, and it will create it itself if I import that picture that I did, which was, the question is where did I save it? Let's go back to Blender. We did this thing where we selected this and then we went to UV editing, there it was, and then I had saved this image as, but see, and then it was okay, I want to go to that same folder, FBX files for there, this time put it in there, and I can just drop it in there, Rosebud Landscape, and save the image there, go back to Blender, and there's the TIFF. Okay. So now, when I drop that onto here, yes, we get the image. Ain't that nice? Now you're seeing this weird lighting effect over there, probably because the light is on. Yeah. So we don't want that light on. And now that we have Rosebud in there, there's Rosebud there. Isn't that Rosebud? There's the lake. Right there. And again, some sort of weird lighting effects going on. Toggle the skybox. Fog and flares. Alright. Now the idea is that the path has to be there. That's just a texture that's been put on. You can see in materials it threw in a material. I think the next thing I generally do with the landscape that I want to work with is I bring in a car, but this is not a good image on here because when you zoom in you don't get anywhere. So we're going to have to deal with several levels of resolution. That texture is not high enough resolution for anything. And that means we got to go back to Blender and zoom way in on the landscape that we want to come in. And then again, we'll go to GIS, we'll go to Web Geodata, go to the base map for Google Satellite. I think that's the best one we have. And really come in now on the lake. To a level of resolution that's going to give us the kind of experience that we want to put on the landscape. So maybe just this piece here. Hit the B for bounding box. Take the lake margin, just the part that we're going to focus on developing in our model. Hit E for extrude. And you say, well, it didn't improve it at all. Well, it did, but it's underneath somewhere. So if we go G and Z and bring this piece up, now we have a much higher resolution piece of it, but it looks like it didn't come in properly. No, it did. It just has to be moved over and matched up. So you see, that's much higher resolution. Maybe not high enough, but at least now when we pick this piece of the landscape, and let me see if I do the DEM. There's no modifier there? Guess there's no modifier there. Oh, I didn't bring in topography. So taking that and now going to get elevation to pull that on there. And now, there it is. A little bit of elevation there. Can certainly exaggerate it to give some contour to your map. It's not great. Strength was supposed to be 1. If we go to 1.6, then when you're walking around the landscape, there's some low areas, but they're way too low. So yeah, not really gonna do much there. Still got these weird depressions and stuff. But having that piece there, and then flipping over to here and saying to it that you want to export this little piece as an FBX and call it just Rosebud. And make sure that you're just including selected objects and say export FBX. Then you have to go to UV editing and select that Rosebud piece that we have there. So that's a different map, and then you got to save that as let's go back in here. Yeah, and let's just call that Rosebud and save the image. Now go back to Unity, and we have to import a new asset, which is now Rosebud as an FBX. But where did it go? Huh. Did I make a mistake? I may have made a mistake. Let me see something here. So I was trying to go in here. Let me go back to my layout and taking this one, which I'm going to call now Rosebud Satellite. Maybe let me do this like export underscore Rosebud. And now I said I want to take that and export it as an FBX. And it's actually, it was there, but where is it? Blender GIS files, it's actually there. There's been environs for FWC, so something's strange here. Open, import new asset, but it doesn't show up, it just shows up as a TIFF. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I've got to actually drop these things in. They're in the wrong folders. So there's Rosebud FBX. So that comes in, and there it is. So now I can drop that on here. And it's in the wrong place, absolutely. The Rosebud image needs to go onto it. There we go. And now this should be much higher resolution when we look down on it. You see the difference between resolution between that one and this one. And then we can keep texturing and texturing and texturing. Now I do have to make it so that this is sitting in the right place. Is there a way to make it transparent? Standard, shader, smoothness, occlusion, emission, opaque, transparent. Yeah, it's not really transparent, is it? So I need to be able to change the transparency. So rendering mode is transparent. Render queue transparent. What happens if I alpha test? No, it didn't do anything. No, didn't do anything. So the rendering mode's got nothing to do with it. How would I let myself see it as a transparent object? I'm just going to keep toggling it on and off, I guess. Try to make it as good as I can. It also seems like it's slightly out of whack in terms of scaling, but it's okay for starters. So you can see then in Unity we've brought this piece in. Now we can see a lot more. It's only when we zoom out that we can see like, oh, the animal's going to have to cross here, but then our game can get into here. And this is good enough resolution that I can bring in a car. So let me save this. And let me go to the asset store and let me search online, and I should sign in. And now I want to search for assets and say car, and then I want to go to a sort by price, low to high, and then there's some cars here that are free. There's a sedan. It would be great if there was an electric car, because that's what we want to have, or say EV car. There's a Tesla charger for $6. Don't want that. Let's see what else they have. EV doesn't show anything, so electric car, somebody's modeled here. But the pricing, if I want to do 0 for only free, nothing comes up. So then you have to do car again, and then say that you want it to be 0 to 0. And then look for cars. Find by price. Why is it not showing 0? Maybe say free car. There's some cars. Free Ukraine cars. That's funny. Background car. Favored car pack. Low poly cars. And we could probably do that one there. Sedan car. That kind of looks like the Chevy Bolt. So let's do the Chevy Bolt looking car. Add to my assets. Accept it. And then open in Unity. Oh, I have to go to my assets. There it is. So now I think when I come in here, if I go to my scene and I go to Window and go to the Package Manager of the Asset Store, no. Open Package Manager. And then say Packages, My Assets, and then you have to sign in. And then hooray! There it is. So I have a bunch of cars in here somewhere that I've loaded, and I can say car, and there's a car, free sci-fi car, car model, low poly car. That's not too bad. Sedan car is the one that I just brought in. So you hit download and it'll come in. Now I put cars in because they are easy to identify on the landscape, and then you can size everything else according to that to see if the map that you brought in from Blender GIS is in fact scaled properly according to Unity's measurements. So that's why I start with a car. And what do we got here? Okay. All right, so then you import it. And it takes its sweet time.
Downstairs, can you please come?
Yeah, be right there once I shut everything down. Okay, bye. Okay, so you get this, and you can import all of that. The package comes in, and then I can see why I'm going to have to script this and just videotape the parts that I need to make a tutorial. Probably do it from scratch, but maybe not. because this is maddening in the amount of time it takes to do this procedure just to get a car in. And there's all sorts of scripts attached to this car, so this must be a pretty fancy car. But I'm putting in a lot more stuff than just the car. I guess it has an entire scene, a cliff scene. Probably has an animation where the car goes off a cliff. It seems to have trees and everything else. So, yeah, cliff scene and clouds. So some of these packages you can have a lot of fun learning from. So from Final Form Studios. They're really generous. They offer a lot of stuff if you have the time to get all this stuff and play with it. There we go. So that's imported now. And now that that's imported and I go back to my scene, there should be now this car. It's Final Form Studio. Where did it go? There's Final Form Studio is there. They have a cliff scene you can use with presets. I just want the car for now. There's the sedan car. And there's a prefab right here. The prefab doesn't have any textures on it, so we'll drop this car and see what happens if we drop it right there. And then it's underground. So I'm going to bring it up. Bring it up till it appears in the world. Bring it here and bring it over there. It looks like the world came in sort of okay. Now go to the rotation and rotate the car to sit there on the landscape. Bring it down. Yeah, it is the right size. So that was the test, that the car fits on the landscape properly. And it doesn't seem to have any interesting materials on anything but the wheels, which is really weird. Some materials is there, but they didn't come in right, and that may be because this is from a different version of Unity. So you have to go to, is it File or Edit? No, you need to go to right-click and say, it's not even there in this version. There's got to be a way to do the render pipeline better. From shader, hidden internal shader. This is an earlier version of, there it goes. So body color, I can go at this and drop, there we go, body color, thank you. Body material, rim. I don't want to mess with the rim. Okay, well at least now we have an interesting body color that we dropped on there. So we have a car that can move around the landscape. And that's about all we have time for today.